Hey, what is going on, everybody? How are you all doing today? I hope you all are having a wonderful and fantastic day today, and if not, hopefully you all will have a better tomorrow. Welcome all. I just wanted to say we have finally made it to the Volume 1 review. I have been working on planning this out for such a long time. I am very glad that we can finally sit down together and talk about this. After all, if it wasn't for RWBY Volume 1, if it wasn't for the trailers, we wouldn't have this series at all, and I must say, Monty's image was a very beautiful thing. Now, what we will be doing, we will be reviewing the trailers, the red, white, black, and yellow trailers, as well as talking about the entirety of Volume 1, giving my thoughts and opinions fully on this volume. So I hope you all are prepared for an in-depth look at RWBY Volume 1 with this review. So sit back, relax, I hope you all enjoy, and let's jump right on into this review. So, going back to the very beginning of RWBY, checking out the trailers all over again, watching everything, I must say that even after all these years, even after the 5.5, almost 6 years now of this red trailer, it still amazes me to this very day. The beauty of what this sets up and showing Monty's choreography, it was majestic. It's very impressive to see, and I will never forget the very night that this trailer came out. I remember that I was told by a friend of the red trailer, and we watched it, and I was excited. I was ready to see the next creation of Monty Oum, and I must say, it was beautiful. This trailer, even to this very day, still strikes me as a beautiful piece of work. It still has that adrenaline pumping feeling to me. Watching RWBY cut through the Beowulfs, it is such a beautiful scene to me, and I just enjoy it, even now. And the scenery itself really sets the mood. It really sets that feeling of when RWBY is going to her mother. It's kind of like a somber feeling a little bit. And I must say, I love the red trailer. I think that is one of the best trailers that has ever come out for RWBY in general. Not just this, but the music for Red Like Roses Part 1, I feel, set the mood. It set the tone for this as well. And I really enjoyed that. And that is something, when we look at the white trailer, that I really loved. Was I loved Mirror Mirror, because it sets up something for Weiss. It sets up who she is. And I really enjoy hearing Mirror Mirror at the same time as the action that actually takes place. And speaking of the action, I really love seeing Weiss fight the Armagigas, seeing her use her semblance to actually jump around on the glyphs, as well as seeing her use dust to actually stop and try to immobilize the Armagigas. I think that this was a brilliant mixture. I really enjoy watching this trailer. This one as well as the red trailer. These are the two trailers that I personally love the most. I really enjoyed them because I feel like when I'm watching them, I'm seeing the beauty of an artist. I feel like I'm really seeing passion within what is being presented. And the choreography flows very well with each of these trailers. It feels as in perfect conjunction, and each of these characters, RWBY has her own fighting style, and you can see that Weiss does too. And I really enjoy the difference between these characters and how they actually fight, because it's different. It's not the same, and the choreography doesn't feel clunky or weird. And the one thing I really like about the black trailer with Blake, I have to say that for one, we finally had the first male character introduced, which was Adam, and which at that point in time, I was actually excited to get to learn more about him, considering that he actually made no appearance in Volume 1. And to hope to see what was going to happen out of him, yes, this trailer left excitement there, at the same time as learning about Blake's story. And I have to say that their fight on the train was very well done. I enjoyed the choreography, but you actually see Blake and Adam do a lot within this fight. You see the teamwork between these two, and you see really great action here. In which I have one question pertaining to Adam that still lingers to this very point in time. His shotguns are no more. It's weird because it shows him actually having these shotguns come out when he actually fights. Like, he's actually fighting with a shotgun sheath. What happened to the shotgun part? I mean, I understand that he could shoot the blade, but if you pay attention to these trailers, he actually shoots blasts that are coming from the sheaths. So what happened to that? It's kind of strange. But I love the animation when he destroys the spider bot. That is beautiful. Seeing his semblance Moonslice just incinerate this thing. And I loved the way that that actually looked. And moving on to good fights, I actually did enjoy the yellow trailer because looking at Yang and looking at her fighting style, you could see that she actually had good rhythm within her fighting style. The fight itself, with how she has a brawler style, you actually could feel it, you could see it, and she could do a lot. And I love the fight with Junior and all of his lackeys. But if you pay attention to one thing whenever it comes to Yang's fight, did you ever notice, or do you remember by chance, that when Yang would fight without her semblance alone, her hair would still glow? And not only that, but it seemed like she was like a fireball when she fought. And it wasn't just her semblance that did that. You would actually see this happen. So I question where that disappeared to, because looking back on that and then going forward, that doesn't seem to really exist anymore. So I question exactly what happened with that. Where did this fireball kind of look to her when she fought, when she would glow, even without her own semblance? Where did that go? It's very strange to me that that kind of disappeared. But with that aside, there was some pretty good jokes within this trailer, and I have to say, for each trailer, I love how each character is different. They have their own traits. We see differences in fighting styles. We see good choreography and animation. I really enjoy each of these trailers for their individuality. Now, of course, the very beginning is where we start with Volume 1. It gets set up that, obviously, there was humanity that was created from dust, and obviously the Grimm destroying humanity. But humanity displayed ingenuity, resourcefulness, and passion, and they had found the powerful substance that allowed them to have the power of nature's wrath, which was dust, which was their own spark of hope, and that the use of dust actually helped to drive off the creatures of darkness and secure the continued existence of humanity. So that's an interesting start. Good world building right there. And then, of course, after that, the narrator goes on to say that even the most brilliant of lights will eventually fade, and that the dark will eventually return to finish what it had started, and to take down and abolish human civilization. So if humanity just relies on strength and dust alone, well, then they will not be enough to defeat the Grimm a second time. So, we get that established, and we hear that Ozpin responds with that it is believed that victory will come from something that has been long forgotten, a smaller, more honest soul. And, of course, you see in the present time that Torchwick is stealing dust from the most developed character and most loved character in the series, the Shopkeep. But his plans are thwarted by RWBY. Now, I'm going to say this. I think this is actually a really funny moment, because it doesn't feel like forced humor or anything. You just see this henchman walk up to RWBY, and I just love the part where she's like, "Are you robbing me?" He's like, "Yes." And she's like, "Oh," and just kicks him through the window of the shop. I think that was a great moment. I really enjoy that. That was actually pretty funny. And we see RWBY take down all the henchmen, and if you pay attention, when she's using the crescent rose, she never hits them with the blade. She hits them with the hilt. It's actually a pretty interesting thing to notice. But when RWBY chases after Torchwick, he tries to kill her by blowing up some dust that he throws at her. Well, Glinda Goodwitch comes in and saves her. And I have to say, the fight that commences here is actually not bad. I think it's a good way to introduce the audience to what they're going to get out of the series. And seeing this fight scene when Cinder comes in to actually try to dispel anything that Glinda Goodwitch does, I find it to be very good. I actually enjoy whenever Cinder is actually fighting here. And I know a lot of people don't like her, but I think this was a good introduction to Cinder and what she is capable of. I mean, it's only a little bit, but I really enjoy what we saw out of Cinder here. Not only this, but I did get some Star Wars vibes, especially when RWBY shoots at Cinder with the sniper, and she just blocks the shots with her hands. You know, it kind of reminded me of like Empire Strikes Back, when Han Solo shoots the shots at Vader, he just deflects them. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. But I think that that was actually a good point here, was to show the power that Cinder has in comparison to someone who is an experienced huntress and someone who is also trying to learn how to become a huntress. I find this a good gap in power there. I think that's a good set off right there for beginning. And then, of course, Ruby wants Glinda's autograph, which I thought that was humorous. And then, of course, Ruby is taken in for interrogation. And Ozpin, the first statement he makes to her is, "You have silver eyes." You can tell it's kind of an uncomfortable moment for Ruby. And he even tries to ask her how she learned how to use a dangerous weapon like that. And of course, she talks about how it's Crow, which was her own uncle, that taught her how to do this. And I like this because I love how Ozpin before that was said, "Oh yes, another scythe wielder reminds me of a dusty old crow." I do like that part. But of course, in the end, this is where Ozpin actually asks Ruby if she would actually like to go to Beacon, and of course, she gets to go because she actually wants to, and he's just like, "Yep, alright, fine." And of course, Ruby's bumped up 2 years, and she's allowed to actually go to Beacon. Now, we do get to see a couple of things when it comes to Torchwick about how he was a criminal, how he hadn't been caught by the authorities, and then, of course, we have a bit about Faunus Wright's movements, and then hearing about the White Fang and how they really intruded upon that. So, I'll talk about Faunus Wrights and all that stuff in a moment. But, getting back to where we were. The whole thing with Beacon and how this starts in Chapter 2, it's actually not bad. Now, of course, we see Ruby and Yang actually after they get off the airship. And, which, by the way, on the airship, Jean vomiting as, alright, we see Jean. So, then, of course, we have Ruby and Yang looking around, they're pretty amazed, and Yang is established right here that she's kind of like that party girl that we've been set up to know. This is what they're really giving us here. And Ruby herself was really hoping that her sister would be there to help her out, and that, of course, instead of having to converse with people normally, she thinks that because she has social awkwardness, that it's easier for her to converse through weaponry. Now, I like that aspect because it shows that people in the world, that there are some people who are just socially awkward. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's understandable. It happens to people. And by relating to others, the best way for Ruby to find her way to communicate is by weaponry. And of course, Yang does find that a bit weird, but it's understandable because some people just can't commune well. And that just happens. That doesn't make them bad people. It doesn't mean that they aren't good at conversation. It just means that they have a hard time with new people, and that's okay. Now, when we get to Weiss and we get to Blake and all that aspect, well, we already have an issue because Ruby is hoping to meet a friend, doesn't work out, big explosion occurs, and Blake kind of helps Ruby a little bit in defense, and then she's off. Which obviously makes Ruby feel down on herself. She feels like she couldn't make any friends there. She thought that maybe with Blake she could have had a friend because of what happened with Weiss, and Blake was already gone. And it really felt bad for Ruby. And I can see that. It makes sense, especially when you're somewhere new and you don't know people. It makes sense. And of course, she then meets Jean, and I'll get more to Jean and his case in a moment. But, of course, whenever Ruby meets back up with Yang, Weiss is right there. And I love the part where Yang actually misunderstands, and she thought that Ruby had a emotional meltdown when there was actually an explosion. I just love Yang's response there. It was just great. Just, oh my god, you actually exploded. I love that scene. And then, of course, Weiss and her sarcasm, it really didn't help things for Ruby. I mean, her sarcastic remark was funny the way she put it, but it's still sad because Ruby's trying to make a friend, and it's not really working out. And then Jean overhears things. Yeah, Jean. Being oblivious as ever. But then, I want to look at Ozpin's speech. So, Ozpin basically states in his speech that they are a waste of energy. I think that is a wrong statement to say to your students, especially the newer ones. You don't tell people that. I'm just saying, Ozpin, I don't know what you were thinking there. And Ruby even says that it just seemed like he wasn't even there. And Yang even points out that it just felt off. And they have a good point. So, of course, after all of that, we then see Ruby trying to write a letter later that night to her friends. And I can understand that. Because if you're somewhere new, and none of your friends are there, and you know nobody, it can be hard. And for Ruby, it's hard. She's even beating herself up over the whole thing with Weiss, saying that she had -1 friend. And it shows you that Ruby puts things on herself. She kind of has that complex. And I think we've all been there at one time or another. And of course, then there's Blake, and they see her, and Ruby tries to talk to her, and she's kind of failing because she has a hard time trying to talk to people she doesn't know, and that goes alongside her social awkwardness. And of course, Yang then tries to help her because she obviously asked for Yang's help. Well, of course, because they keep talking, I like the one part with the book about the man with two souls fighting over control of the body. That's epic foreshadowing, just saying. I like that foreshadowing there about Ozpin. And then, of course, Weiss comes in because, oh look, y'all are being loud. You all are annoying everyone. And then it's like, oh wait, it's you. And of course, this shows more conflict that's to come in the future. And I actually enjoy seeing where that chapter ended off. But when we hit chapter 4, Nora is brilliant. I just loved Nora's character from the start because of her nature. How energetic she is, how she doesn't stop talking. It's hilarious. It's comical, and you can just tell Ren's like, like, alright, sure. He's just kind of passive to it, which is kind of funny. And you see all the students getting ready, and then here's one thing I'm going to say, though. So, Ozpin, so do you like to trebuchet kids to their demise? I mean, you even state that if they don't have a landing strategy, that they may die. And even if they have the landing strategy to destroy anything in their way, because the Grimm could kill them. Wow, Ozpin, is that the way to initiate children? Because it sounds more like you're just sending them off to say, hey, alright, you make it back, congratulations. You don't? Well, then maybe next time. Oh, wait a minute, that there may not be a next time. Yeah, alright, just remember, take a lesson out of Ozpin's book. You want to teach somebody, trebuchet them into a forest and see if they can make it, and then just have horrible creatures that could kill them. Yeah, that's the best way to teach somebody. Oh, Ozpin, what were you thinking? This is why Hazel hates you. So, as they all get launched through the forest, they all start having their own landing strategies, and everybody has to find people because teams will be in groups of 4. And then, if you lock eyes with somebody, boom, that's your teammate. So, of course, out of all things, we have Ruby find Weiss, and Weiss tries to walk away. And then, obviously, she comes back because she saw Jean. So, she didn't want to team up with Jean there. Poor Jean. But, obviously, they become a team. Well, they have their conflicts. And since their conflicts continue, there are more issues. Because the whole Beowulf situation, Ruby trying to prove to Weiss that she could take care of things. And then, of course, Weiss saying that Ruby is just a spoiled little brat who got lucky to get into the academy. And it's really sad to see this, but, on a side note here, has anybody ever noticed, if you're a fan of Neptunia series, that Ruby seems like Neptune and Weiss seems like Noir? I don't know if anybody notices that. I'm a fan of Neptunia, but I just kind of see their characters kind of being like that. But then, of course, we see Yang make her landing, and obviously, Yang fights 2 Ursai, which are bears, which is a Goldilocks reference. And then, of course, she meets Blake, since Blake actually then kills the other Ursai. So, we see Yang obviously get frustrated over her hair get cut off there, too. Shows her personality of being a hothead in these kind of situations whenever her hair is touched. And so, we then next learn about the concept of aura, because Pyrrha saves Jean from falling. Obviously, after Weiss walked away, Pyrrha is the one who found Jean. So, the concept of aura there was that anyone that is not Grimm, basically, can use aura. Because aura cannot be used if the wielder does not have a soul, in which the Grimm lack a soul. So they cannot actually use aura. And, which we did get to see this with Ren, and we did get to see him using a combination of his aura with Stormflower and his skills to actually take down a Grimm. Now, Jean himself had no idea what aura was because his aura had not been unlocked, and also he'd just never been taught about aura. So then, of course, we have Pyrrha unlock Jean's aura with her own. And we then see Jean's own aura heal his own cut on his face, because Pyrrha accidentally smacked him in the face with a branch. And so, since we see that, obviously, Pyrrha states that, hey look, Jean, you have a lot of aura. Now, that we get to see this, and as Jean states, it's like a force field. It's what it is. Aura is a defensive mechanism, and this is what Monty had used to actually say, hey, look, I can take a blade and I don't have to kill people because, or it could be the defense, so that these people don't get cut up or die, but instead using this to make a long drawn out battle. I think that Monty had a good idea doing this to make the fights more intense this way. So I really agree with the method he used for Ori here. And of course, Jean and Pyrrha stumble upon a cave in which Jean thinks that the relic is in. And of course, Pyrrha disagrees. Then, well, they find out it's actually a Death Stalker. And Jean gets flung across the forest. And meanwhile, you then have Nora and Lyrin. And I just love that moment with Nora just trying to act like a sloth, even though that's probably not what a sloth sounds like. And Ren even makes that statement. I just enjoy these two, even though Glinda Goodwitch is like, oh, yeah, I don't really think that they're a compatible pair. Well, they've kind of grown up together. I think that begs to differ there, Glinda. They work pretty well together. But looking at everything that happens up to this point, the teams start to pair up together. The relics are actually found by Yang and Blake, and they realize other people had already been there, grabbed the relic, and took off. Well, the Death Stalker, and which RWBY attacks a tree which a Nevermore was on. And because of that leads the Nevermore to be flying about. And then RWBY uses this as an idea to try to find the relics, as well as Weiss grabbing aboard the Nevermore. And funny thing is, you have your little moments here whenever everybody finally starts reuniting with one another. But the big thing is, RWBY thinks she's going to be able to take on the Death Stalker, and it almost leads to her own death. But Weiss comes in at the very last moment and actually saves her. And this is a good point because RWBY and Weiss have had conflict since the moment they really met here. But Weiss comes to the realization that, yes, she can be pretty hard to deal with from time to time. And that teamwork is actually important at this point. So it's good to see that she was actually there to save RWBY. And, of course, the fight commences between Team RWBY, Team Juniper, and then the Death Stalker and the Nevermore. And I'm going to say this. This, to me, is probably the highlight of Volume 1. And the reason why I say this is because the action is very good. It's great not just within the action aspect, but the choreography was done very well. And the song Red Like Roses Part 2 was good for this. I really enjoyed this song. Then again, the soundtrack in general is great for Volume 1. But I really like how they set this up, because you have Team Juniper taking on the Death Stalker, and Team RWBY taking on the Nevermore. And I like the way that this is done. I like the way that Team Juniper worked together. I like the way that Team RWBY worked together. Both sides worked out well. RWBY had a plan to take down the Nevermore, and she uses Weiss's glyphs to go all the way up the mountain after they have already got the Nevermore on the ground. And then, of course, this leads all the way up to decapitating the Nevermore. I think that is one of the most adrenaline-pumped moments in RWBY. I enjoy that scene, and then at the very end, you have RWBY at the top of the mountain base, just looking back at everyone else, and everybody's in awe, because this actually worked. The Nevermore died, and they pulled it off. And she deserved to stand victorious there, because then, soon afterward, she is announced as the team leader to RWBY. And that was a really good thing for her. And then, of course, Jean himself was also made as team leader for Team Juniper. Now, the next part here, which is a continuation to the conflict between Weiss and RWBY. Thing is here, Weiss was being a bit obnoxious, I guess you could say, because RWBY herself, yes, while she is not someone to take her studies seriously, as you can tell, but then again, if you're in a class and it's not really that interesting, I don't think you're going to be that invested. And I can't really blame RWBY entirely there, because Port kind of did sound a little uninteresting on his lesson for some people. So I can't blame her there. But Weiss is that student that tries her best. She does try to learn everything that she can. And to try to prove that she is a good student, she offered to actually fight the Borbatus that Port said to show your skills. And, of course, Weiss does so. And I have to say, with RWBY actually sitting over there on the sidelines trying to cheer her on, Weiss does get frustrated with this. And, yeah, Weiss did get a little upset over RWBY. And it's all because of the fact that Weiss didn't get her way. she didn't get to be the leader like she had wanted, and she thinks that RWBY is incompetent. Well, it's not the fact that RWBY is incompetent. She's not. And it comes down to Weiss just thinking that she deserved more. And then after their argument, which really does depress RWBY here, it makes her feel like she is doing a bad job. And of course, Ozpin comes by, and RWBY questions whether it was the right decision that Ozpin made to make her leader or not. And of course, he said that is a mistake to be seen. And then we get some epic foreshadowing. Hey, look, I've made more mistakes than any man, woman, or child ever have. Ooh, alright, Ozpin. Coming from the guy who likes to trebuchet children. Alright. But, he even said that this mistake is to be seen. So, considering that he said this, that really tells you something. And it is to be seen, considering that he even makes a statement that it's only been a day that she's been a leader. And of course, I like this moment with Weiss when she talks to Port, because this helps her come to the realization that you're not going to get everything you want in life. And that's true. Not everything goes the way you want it to go. And the only thing you can do is try to be the best person you can be, and work as hard as you possibly can. And I liked this talk between them because it showed that Weiss started to realize things, and she even wants to be a better teammate and friend to RWBY here. Now, we then get Jean's arc. And I know a lot of people have complaints about this arc, but hear me out on this one. I don't hate this arc. I don't actually dislike this arc at all. As a matter of fact, I think it was good for Jean. A lot of people originally had complained about this arc because they said, oh, well, I thought the show was called Team RWBY, not Team Juniper. Well, thing is, Jean and the rest of Team Juniper, they're important too. Their characters matter. And to get their characteristics flushed out more, you have to focus more on characters from time to time. This is what they did with Team Juniper. They flushed them out a bit more here because this is what they could do. They could be like, hey, we're going to make Juniper important. So let's give Jean his own arc, let's help people understand him a bit more, and let's go from there. And his story is something that people can relate to, because Cardin is a bully. Straight up a jerk. And he's a character I just don't like, because, like I said, he's a bully. And to bully people, that's not right. You shouldn't go around doing that. And for Jean, anybody can relate to this as being bullied, because Jean is being bullied here in this situation. He's being put down, he's being just treated awful by a guy that has nothing to do with him. I mean, realistically, he just treats him awful because he can. And, of course, we even see him treat Faunus terrible. Poor Velvet, she got treated awful in that scene. But it shows how bad of a character Cardin is. He's just a jerk, like I said. And he was meant to be the antagonist role for this arc for Jean, to prove a point. Now, I'm going to say this before we continue on. Just want to point this part out too. One of the best lines in Volume 1, period, in my opinion, is Nora, when she says, let's break his legs. This is one of the best quotes ever in RWBY, I think. I literally love this line. But, obviously, everybody notices that Jean is having a problem with Cardin bullying him. And that's obviously what brings this statement on. And since Jean is being mistreated, his friends want to obviously help him. And he tries to deny that Cardin is bullying him. And I think it's understandable, because I think sometimes people have actually felt like that. They have felt like, oh no, I'm not getting bullied. I don't know what you're talking about. And I think that some people try to hide that fact sometimes, because it's happened. It's happened before. But with Pyrrha trying to help out Jean because she thinks that Jean could have some combat experience whenever he loses to Cardin, she's doing this to try to help him, and he feels like he is nothing more than a damsel in distress. And it's a sad moment because he feels like he's nobody. He feels like he's not good enough, like he's just a comical relief character. But as we start to see, Cardin then starts to take advantage of Jean because he finds out about Jean's secret of actually putting in fake transcripts into the school so that he can get in there. And, well, while that was wrong on Jean's part to do that in the first place, it was wrong on Cardin's part to try to blackmail him. It's just, two wrongs don't make a right. And, of course, this leads to Cardin also wanting to get revenge on Pyrrha because Pyrrha showed him up in class. And, the thing here is, it's never right to be a bully, and you shouldn't want to get revenge. It's never right. It's never good to harbor all that anger and hatred. It's just best to try to be the best person you can be. Cardin clearly is an example of not knowing how to do that. And so Jean then decides to protect his friends. And so by throwing this syrup at Cardin, what does that result in? It results in an Ursa coming to attack him. So his friends run off, alert the others, and Pyrrha, Weiss, and RWBY try to come to the rescue, but Pyrrha instead decides to let Jean take care of this situation on his own. In which we find out that Pyrrha's semblance is polarity, when she actually uses his shield to protect himself while killing the Ursa. So, in the end, this solves the problem for Jean and Cardin. And the thing here is, Jean was actually able to feel like somebody. He wasn't the damsel this time. And as much as we got teased on his semblance, by the way, whenever Cardin punched him, that was something that we had to wait on for 5 whole volumes. Oh, isn't that something? But I was glad to see how the arc actually turned out. And in the end, Jean actually did ask for Pyrrha's help. He actually did say, hey, I do need your help. I do need your advice. And considering the veteran fighter that Pyrrha has been, considering how well she has done, being a Mistral Tournament champion 5 times in a row, well, that's good. It's good that he's finding some help from somebody that's very experienced. And overall, I actually like this arc because it really flushes out Jean's character as well as Pyrrha, gives us a little insight to Lyra and Nora. Now, the next part, which is actually the final arc, is right here with Blake. And now, this one, I don't have any issues with because it really teaches us about Weiss and it teaches us about Blake. And of course, we are actually introduced to 2 characters, which one of them actually really does help out Blake within this volume. And that character actually is Sun Wukong, the Monkey King himself. And I have to say, I like Sun's character from the start. I think that Sun was actually a positive example for Blake's arc. I think he was a good character, and he really helped her out. And he even did know of the White Fang, and he even did know of the issues concerning them. He even states that whenever Blake talks about the White Fang with him. And then, of course, the other character we actually do get is Penny. And Penny is basically Pinocchio. And, of course, we don't know the whole story to her just yet, in which we learn in Volume 2. But Penny is an interesting character, and you can't tell me you didn't get robot vibes from her the first moment you met her, because she felt kind of off, if you get what I mean. It just, meeting her character, it just felt off to me, like she was more than just what she seemed. And so, we see the conflict between Weiss and Blake, and it's all because they see how the White Fang broke into another dust shop. And of course, at first, Blake doesn't want to believe it. She denies this, but yeah, we all see where that goes. So, Weiss actually starts trying to say that Sun is a filthy faunus. And because he did kind of be a stowaway and say thanks for, giving me the ride and that I was a great stowaway. That's what Sun said. That's what he said. And so Blake herself is actually kind of bothered by these comments, saying that, hey, you shouldn't be calling him that. That's not right. And so Weiss is obviously talking about the White Fang and how they are bad faunus, that they have been bad and they've been doing terrible things. And this leads to more of a conflict that continues all the way back to their own room at the academy. And, of course, Weiss then brings up her story about how she has seen family members and friends disappear, and how she's seen people even get executed by the White Fang, which then, of course, led to problems with Jacques, because Jacques would come home displeased because of what would happen, so he would take it out on his family. That's the whole point of what that was about. And so, of course, this leads to the reveal that Blake herself was actually a part of the White Fang. And she was upset because all the faunus were being pushed around, and they were sick of discrimination. But because Blake then reveals her secret, she is afraid, because she's afraid everybody is going to be against her. She's afraid that they will hate her for being a former member of the White Fang. So she did what she has always done, and she ran away. Then we get a very sad but adorable moment. It's sad because, well, you gotta feel bad for Blake on that one because the faunus being discriminated against. But then again, her cat ears. It's cute. But it's a sad moment for her. And so she feels that she has to leave because she's a flawed character. She's afraid that she won't be accepted. She's afraid that she's just going to be treated the way the Faunus have. And it's sad. It's a really sad moment for her, but of course she comes across Sun, who always knew she was a Faunus all along. And there's one problem I have here. Just one little problem. So, she says she was a White Fang member years ago. Years ago? Are we sure about that? Because she looks the same in the trailer. Okay, yep, alright, we'll go with it. And we even learn about Faunus rights movements and how Blake was actually a part of them. And, of course, we then learn that the violence started with the shift between the leaders. That the old leader stepped down, the new one took over, which was Sienna Khan. And ironically, I love how Blake's name is Belladonna, but yet she's not noticed as the daughter of Gira. But then again, Gira was probably not even thought of at this point, so I guess we gotta let that one go, really. But it turns out that Torchwick was in charge of the White Fang, and of course, Blake didn't want to believe that the White Fang were the ones that were doing this, as I said earlier. But she even states that I knew all along. I just doubted it. Yeah, I just wanted to doubt it. But her and Sun team up together to try to take on the issue, which is Torchwick. And Torchwick himself, he actually attacks RWBY whenever RWBY comes to try to help out Blake, because she sees smoke in the sky from an explosion. And so, of course, with that being said, Penny then finally fights. And yeah, she shows she's an android. There we go. We finally get to see that. And I have to say, Penny was cool in this scene. Just her introduction to a fight was great. I mean, yeah, we saw her before this, and she had good moments, but her fight introduction was great. I have to say, she has what I were to call the best Dragon Ball Z impersonation out of any character in the cast. Either that, or, you could say Genos from One Punch Man, or whatever other anime you want to come up with for a cannon being blasted. I have to say, that was a good moment when she cut the ships in half. I did like that with her laser. That was a really cool moment. Even RWBY was impressed with how Penny did what she did. And, of course, in the very end, Torchwick flees because of what happened. It says, these kids just keep getting weirder and weirder. Oh, man. I miss Roman. I really do. He was a great character, in my opinion. I really miss him. One character I think shouldn't have died. But, anyways. The thing is, the team gets together after that. And once they finally got Blake back, you could definitely tell that she told them about it, because RWBY, for one, says to Weiss that she's got cute kitty ears. So, of course, Blake explained the situation, it seems. And that she doesn't care anymore. That she doesn't care about what happened in the past. And that since Blake is no longer a member of the White Fang, it doesn't matter anymore. And this is something I'm going to say. It shows, like I stated before, Weiss is not a racist. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been accepting of Blake there. So, there's that. But the thing is that in the end, Team RWBY gets back together. And then, of course, Crow sends a message to Ozpin. And Ozpin gets this message, and it states, the Queen has pawns, which is a part of the cryptic mystery there that we're meant to solve at that time being, what that could mean. And that was an interesting note, first off, and I have to say that I did actually like that, because it's kind of going along Monty's little theme of mysteries that he started to throw out there in the series. But at the same time, at the end credits, we do then also get to see Cinder. And she even states that, obviously, they're not done with their plan. So, Cinder, all along, was actually the one in charge of this operation, if you get what I mean. Considering that, later on we find out about Salem, but at the time being, we don't know about that. So, it's an interesting thing they throw in there with Cinder at the very end, and it was a pretty good post-credits scene. Now, here are my final thoughts. What I overall think about this volume. RWBY Volume 1, for what it is, I do actually enjoy it. I think this volume is actually a good volume. I think that the characters, it establishes them very well, and it really gets us to understand them. It gives us a setting, starts to build up the world itself a little bit. And we learn little by little about certain things, and even sets up some mysteries for us to learn about and try to uncover in the future. And I have to say, when going back on this, the characters feel real. Now, what I mean by this is they feel like they could be real people, as opposed to later on volumes. And the choreography, despite how some people may have issues with the original animation, for what RWBY was at the time that it was made, I don't find an issue with this animation. As a matter of fact, I'm somebody who still really enjoys older anime itself. I do enjoy some of the older animation designs. So realistically, I think that its animation is fine. I really don't have a problem with it, and Monty's choreography is beautiful. It's a mastery of art, and it's so much better than what we get later on. And I must say that Volume 1 is one of my favorite volumes. It's not my number one favorite volume, but it is one of my favorite volumes. And I have to say, it does a good job for what it did. It does a good job for setting up things, and that's the point of the first volume, is to set up things. And I like its slice of life mixture with action, because I've seen several different genres of anime, and I've seen slice of life, and I've seen action. And I have to say, the mixture of the two for Volume 1 was good, and it really did help us get around to understanding characters. I think it was a good setup, and it really teaches people things. And I really don't hate it. I don't think the writing is bad, and the humor was not forced. It didn't feel forced at all. It actually felt like good humor. It wasn't trying to be forced, and it just was actually funny. I actually enjoyed it, and these lines are memorable. But my overall rating of Volume 1, I think it was good. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. But that's just my opinion. Anyways, so I'll be back again on Tuesday. Let me know what you think down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know what you think down below. But anyways, thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. And if you did enjoy, hit the video with a like, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and share this with your friends if you found this informative or useful. Well, anyways, I hope you all have yourselves a wonderful and fantastic day today. And remember, if today was not a good day, tomorrow could always be better. Take care of yourselves and everyone around you, and have yourselves a good one out there, everybody.